Recently, China and the US have been experiencing a downward spiral in their relations. The tensions between the two countries have been severely escalated. There are various reasons why these countries are opposing each other. One of the main reasons is the trade war that former President Donald Trump launched. Trump threatened to raise tariffs on all Chinese imports and also to declare a national emergency, shutting down the Chinese company Huawei and pushing it out of the US market. Both countries are actively engaging in warlike behavior, which might pave the way towards the Third World War. This tragedy almost came into being a reality when a United States warship confronted and came face-to-face with the Chinese Navy. They were just a mere 150 yards apart from one another. One wrong move from any of the country's navies could have resulted in prompting a terrible event in the South China Sea. The risk of war is still there and can be the case anytime, as China is sitting stubbornly on its refusal to yield despite countless objections from its neighboring countries. Today, we'll talk about the events that almost led up to a tragedy and one of the most dangerous maritime encounters in history, and how the situation can be sparked up by the smallest move made by any one of these countries. As we dive into the incident's details, experts have already alarmed the rest of the world about the severe consequences that could be faced. Now, without further ado, let us run through the events that are potentially going to be marked in history. The infamous 9-Dash Line. To fulfill the desire to become a superpower and to claim a huge chunk of the South China Sea resulted in the drawing of 9 dashes around its vicinity. You can think of it more like a game of Monopoly with the territory on the line, and China wanting to claim all the property on the board. You might wonder, why the 9 dashes? The thing is, Chinese people see the number 9 as a lucky number, and thus they've used this number to outline their territory. You may have imagined that it's based on some kind of international law or treaty, but in reality, it's just China using an indirective saying, "We want all the property and it's ours." The South China Sea as a whole is a strategic waterway through which trillions of dollars worth of trade happen every year. China claims that whatever crosses and comes inside the dash lines is automatically theirs. The 9-dash line is not recognized by any other country in the entire region or by the international community. Remember that the countries that are involved in the region are Vietnam, Taiwan, Malaysia, Brunei, and the Philippines. However, for thousands of years, Vietnam has been a victim and is always struggling to hold its ground. To its surprise, it has once again been involved in this tussle for power. The U.S. aircraft carrier Ronald Reagan pulled in at Da Nang, Vietnam on June 25, 2023. It was the third such visit since the Vietnam War ended. The three-ship task force included the USS Ronald Reagan, the USS Robert Smalls, a guided missile cruiser that was formerly named the USS Chancellorsville, and the USS Antietam, all stayed in Vietnam for 6 days. Now, the Navy initially stayed silent on how long the visit would last due to security measures. The previous visits were by the USS Carl Vinson in 2018 and in 2020, the Theodore Roosevelt. This visit caused the Chinese government to be angry, worried, and upset. China assumes that these visits were an attempt by the United States government to lure Vietnam into allying with them and turn against its neighboring country, China. The US has a base located on the South China Sea, which means that to refuel the ships and look for damages, repair, and maintenance of the ships, they don't have to sail all the way back to Hawaii, Japan, or any other allied country. Because Vietnam's been a victim and has been struggling to improve its conditions, the Vietnamese government is being very cautious, however, with its newly built relationship with the United States, and at the same time is aware of the value and potential of such a relationship and what it can offer. Vietnam and China share a border that measures about 806 miles long. However, the two countries are very different and don't get along due to their traditional differences, and also because of the Chinese invasion of 1979 in Vietnam, causing significant casualties, which forced Beijing to pull out and declare victory after a month. The two countries are also rivals in territorial claims in the South China Sea, including drilling rights. If the two countries happen to go to war due to any conflict, The modern Beijing armed forces will be a difficult challenge for the Vietnamese, and they would need allies by their side. The Vietnamese media also noted the visit brought with it the intention of marking the 10th anniversary of the establishment of the Vietnam-U.S. Comprehensive Partnership of 2013. Even though the initial reason for the Ronald Reagan aircraft carrier's visit was caused by the fact that in May of 2023, China sent their survey ship, Zhongyang Hong, into the economic exclusive zone of Vietnam and the South China Sea, which caused Vietnam to protest. The original political object of China's assertive behavior against its neighboring country, Vietnam, at sea was to show that despite it having allies and being partners with members of the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, it'll still be alone whenever China tries to confront them. Vietnam's naval bases serve as a strategic asset in managing the complicated relationship that it has with China. Years of conflict and war had left Vietnam exhausted. When they were declared as a free country in 1975, the Soviet Union came forward with offering a hand in friendship as they wanted to access the newly liberated South. Vietnam declined their offer as they feared that their allegiance with the Soviet Union may result in provoking China. Soon, they realized that even if they surrendered to the Chinese authority, it would not stop Beijing from helping and planning to attack Vietnam. Thus, in November 1978, Vietnam opened its naval bases to anyone interested. These Sovietization moves that were taken by Vietnam caused the United States to normalize its relationships with China. Hence, on January 1, 1979, an official allegiance was created between China and the U.S. against the Soviet Union and the world socialist system. Not only did the Chinese leader, Mao Zedong, strongly oppose the Soviet Union, but he also negated the world socialist system by proposing the three-world theory before its passing in 1976. The first world consisted of superpowers, such as the United States and the Soviet Union, the second world containing the developing powers of the world, and the third world to be the exploited nations in Africa, Latin America, and most of Asia. The basis on which the theory came into existence was to oppose the Soviet Union and the world socialist system. Deng Xiaoping went to the United States in 1979 to sit and discuss an attack against Vietnam by China. In the discussion, Deng made it clear that if prompted, China would attack to counter the Soviet expansion in the region. Carter officially wrote a letter to Deng. In the letter, China was advised not to attack Vietnam. However, in practice, the United States Army supported the Chinese aggression against Vietnam by aiding them and by providing them with satellite information on the Soviet troops along the Sino-Soviet border. After the war had broken out, the National Security Advisor of Carter, Brzezinski, met the Chinese ambassador Chiang Zemin every day to give him his intelligence and advice. In a Chinese Communist Party Central Plenum held in March 1970, Deng Xiaoping stated that the United States had informed him that not one of the 54 Soviet divisions that covered the Sino-Soviet border was fully equipped. This information encouraged and made China more determined to implement its plan to invade Vietnam without any fear of retaliation from the Soviet Union military. One lesson that was learned from Vietnam was that China would not have dared to conduct a large-scale war against them if their relationship with the United States was normalized, and also that the good diplomatic relation and military alliance with the U.S. Army would have prevented the 1979 invasion of China and still could have protected Vietnam by preventing future aggressive advances from an ever-expansionist China. What are your thoughts on how China is committed to pursuing and chasing its objective of taking over the South China Sea? And do you think the nations of the world are just going to roll over and let it happen? Let us know what you think. Okay, another factor that adds to the distress is Taiwan's resistance to China's pressure. Now, all of it crawls back to China thinking that it owns basically everything in the South China Sea. Air Force Senior Colonel Tian Junli said in a statement, "China sees self-ruled Taiwan as a breakaway province that will eventually be under Beijing's control." Also, the president of China, Xi Jinping, has stated reunification with Taiwan must be fulfilled and has not ruled out the possible use of force to achieve this. For context, the whole country of Taiwan is just an island that's roughly 100 miles from the coast of Southeast China. It sits in the so-called First Island chain, which also includes a list of U.S.-friendly territories that are vital to the foreign policy of the United States. If China is ever to take over Taiwan, some experts from the West suggest that it could be a step to project power in the Western Pacific and could possibly be a danger to the military bases of the United States, such as in Guam and Hawaii. However, China insists that its intentions are clear and purely peaceful. Taiwan was taken control of by the Chinese in the 18th century when the Qing's dynasty started administering it. Then in 1895, the Chinese gave up the island to Japan after losing the First Sino-Japanese War. In 1945, China again took control of the island after Japan suffered a loss in World War II. Now, this caused a civil war to erupt in mainland China between the nationalist government forces that were being led by Mao Zedong and the Chiang Kai-shek Communist Party. The Communists eventually won in 1949 and took Beijing under their control. Kai-shek and what other part that was left of the party, known as Kuomintang, fled to Taiwan and ruled the country for the next several decades. China points to this history to say that Taiwan was originally a Chinese province, but the Taiwanese point to the same point and argue that they were never a part of the modern Chinese state that was formed after the Revolution of 1911, or of the People's Republic of China that was established under Mao in 1949. But why is Taiwan so important to the rest of the world? What does it hold in its power? And what does it have that is so desired by everyone? The answer is that most of the world's everyday electronic equipment, ranging from phones to laptops, watches, gaming consoles, and gaming gadgets, is powered by computer chips that are manufactured and made in Taiwan. A single factory named the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC, has over half the world's market in its control, as it is one of the world's most important and largest industries. This would give Beijing a massive advantage over the rest of the world. Being such a small island and battling up front with a country so powerful, Taiwan at best could slow down attacks from the Chinese by initiating counterattacks on shore while they wait for help from the outside. That help could come from the US or any other of its allies. It's fair to say that a confrontational exchange between two parties always leads to something far greater. On the 3rd of July 2023, a video was released on the internet in which a Chinese warship sails within 150 yards of a United States destroyer in the Taiwan Strait in a dangerous and unsafe manner. On the other side, China was deliberately blaming the United States for provoking risk in the region. On June 3rd, 2023, a month before the incident, the Canadian and United States navies were conducting a joint exercise in the Strait when the Chinese ship showed up in front of the U.S. guided missile destroyer, Changchun, forcing it to slow down in order to avoid a collision. In the mid-1990s, China built a small-sized structure on stilts over a coral reef located in the South China Sea. It's just 217 kilometers or 135 miles from the coast of the Palawan Island of the Philippines, and is known as the Mischief Reef. At the time, Beijing reassured Manila that the Mischief Reef, a structure topped by 4 octagonal structures with a Chinese flag waving on the top of its head, was made to act as a mere shelter for fishermen. However, it's pretty much obvious now that the Mischief Reef was part of a plan for something much, much larger. In the December of 2016, the Asia Maritime Transparency Initiative, or AMT, was started. It was a think tank that was released with its center based on strategic and international studies. Released satellite photos showed just how far the things on the reef part of the Spratly Islands have progressed. According to the Asia Maritime Transparency Initiative, the reef is now equipped with large anti-aircraft guns and close-in weapons. China also has control over 6 reefs turned into islands in the Spratlys, and the latest images show that similar defensive systems have recently appeared on those as well. The AMT director, Greg Pauling, responded by saying, "This is militarization." Pauling also added that the Chinese can argue all they want that the reef is for defensive purposes, but if they're building massive anti-aircraft guns and close-in weapon systems, it shows that they're preparing for a conflict in the future. In short words, China's militarization attempts and territorial claims at the South China Sea have and will continue to spark up tension and conflict in all the regions of its neighboring countries, and also in the international community as well. Now, China is determined to continue pursuing its agenda without having any fear. This is why the international community has to stay alert and move with caution so that they can promote solutions that are diplomatic and peaceful. Things are complex, and one must not think only about the uncertainties that the future holds, but also the possible impact on human lives and what could potentially happen to future generations. Now, as of right now, anything is possible and any decision can be made as we wait and watch for further events to unfold. If you enjoyed our video, then please consider showing your love and support by giving us a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel. Don't forget to click on that little bell notification as well so that you can stay updated every time we drop new content. And before I get out of here, I just gotta ask you, what are your real true opinions on China's presence in the South China Sea? Does the so-called Middle Kingdom actually own all of it, or are they just a little full of themselves? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And as always, everybody, thanks for watching. We'll see you in our next video.